The Mariners begin a pivotal series versus the Texas Rangers on Thursday with Kumar Rocker on the mound making his MLB debut. The Mariners are only a few games back in both the wild card and the division, so we're going to break down all the different schedules of the teams ahead of them, including the Astros, the Twins, etc., and see how we feel about the Mariners' chances moving forward. And of course, we're going to start with the Mariners' schedule. At the time of recording this, we are right here on September 12th. The Mariners have a 4-game series here versus the Texas Rangers at home. Kumar Rocker is going to pitch on the 12th. Sounds like DeGrom will be pitching on the 13th and Max Scherzer on the 14th, with to be determined on the 15th right now. Tough 3-game stretch here for the Mariners, of course, facing Rocker and then DeGrom and then Scherzer. But if any pitching staff can go up against those three, it's got to be the Mariners pitching staff. The Mariners will have a random day off at home here before facing the New York Yankees to finish out a 9-game homestand, the second to last homestand this season. The Mariners then fly to Texas to once again face the Rangers before going on to that gigantic pivotal series versus the Houston Astros. Hopefully the Mariners can take 3 of 4 or mop the Texas Rangers here, win the series versus the Yankees, win the series versus Texas, and have themselves in a really good spot here versus Houston. Every loss is going to hurt and every win is going to feel incredible. The Mariners finish up the season against the Oakland Athletics. This Yankees series and this Houston series are both incredibly scary to me, and the Texas series does feel like it could be a trap, but alas, I think that we really have to worry about this Houston series because, of course, with where the Mariners are at, Houston is the team they're trying to catch. Again, the Mariners are only 3.5 games back of Houston. They have a 3-game series coming up in Houston, so if the Mariners can somehow find a way to gain at least another half game on the Astros the rest of the way, they can find themselves in control of their own destiny moving forward as they head down to Houston later this month. In terms of the rest of the way for Houston, so if the Mariners are trying to catch up to Houston, they need Houston to lose a little bit. And as of today, the 12th, the Houston Astros will finish up their series at home versus the Oakland Athletics before going on the road to face the Angels and then the San Diego Padres for 3. The Angels should be a pretty easy series for them. Somehow, some way, the Athletics have handled them so far. And the Padres, I mean, we just saw how tough the Padres can be and how good that offense could be. Padres at home is going to be a tough one for the Houston Astros. They then play the Los Angeles Angels again, this time in Minute Maid Park, right before the Mariners come to town. And they finish up the year versus the AL Central leading Cleveland Guardians. I'm not going to lie to you. The schedule for the Houston Astros does look a hell of a lot easier. But with that being said, they've already lost 2 of 3, if not have been swept by the Oakland Athletics as you got to see this video. I'm recording it before that Athletics game has started. So again, the hardest games for them look like the Padres and the Mariners and of course the Guardians, but they still have some games left versus the Angels and of course the 1 game left versus the Athletics today. I would say that the Astros have an easier schedule moving forward. It's that 3-game series. It starts on the 23rd through the 25th of September that is going to be so pivotal for this Mariners team. And if they can find a way to gain a half game or even a full game on the Astros by the time that series comes around, the Mariners hold their destiny in their own hands. The final series of the year, the Mariners have the advantage in my opinion. They get to play the Oakland Athletics at home, final series of the year, whereas the Houston Astros have to play the Guardians in Cleveland. So obviously we're going to be Guardians fans that week. Shout out to Jose Ramirez, my guy. I am really hoping that the Mariners can come out of that series versus the Houston Astros and put them in their place. Could you imagine how good that would feel? We have about 15 games left in the season now, and we are really getting down into the thick of it, and looking at the schedules moving forward, it's going to be so much fun to see where the Mariners end up at the end of this year. It's probably going to break our hearts. It normally does. But now we have to look at the division for the AL, and there's a little bit more of a path here for the Seattle Mariners than there is for the division, albeit with a few more twists. So looking at the wild card right now, the Mariners are behind the Red Sox, the Tigers, and of course the Minnesota Twins, who hold the 3rd spot right now. Looking at how they've played in their last 10 games, the Tigers are 7-3, the Twins and the Red Sox are both 4-6, and the Mariners are 5-5 in their last 10 games. The Mariners have been able to make up a little ground on the Twins after they went on a losing streak versus the Kansas City Royals, losing all 3 games versus them, and this is a spot where the Mariners have a good chance to make up those 4 games because these teams might end up beating up on each other and they don't have as easy as schedules moving forward. Looking at the Red Sox schedule the rest of the way, they start a series versus the New York Yankees starting today on Thursday, a 4-game series, before then going on to take on the Tampa Bay Rays. They then have a series versus Minnesota, that number 3 wildcard team. If one of these teams can beat up on the other one, the Mariners will find themselves in a good spot right here. Hopefully, honestly, I think the best way to look at this right now is that the Red Sox get like swept or something by the Yankees, but then they somehow find a way to sweep the Twins and they just beat up on each other the rest of the way. The Red Sox also have to play Toronto and Tampa Bay, so not an incredibly easy schedule for them. Toronto has not been great. Tampa Bay is right around 500, but the New York Yankees, a team the Mariners are about to play, are definitely going to be a tough test for them. Now let's take a look at the Detroit Tigers the rest of the way, who are finishing up a series versus the Colorado Rockies today. They then take on Baltimore at home. Obviously going to be a tough one for them. Baltimore is very, very good, before flying to Kansas City to take on the Royals. So a couple of tough series here for them, and it doesn't get any easier as they then have to face the Orioles again, this time in Baltimore. However, they do wrap the season up against the Chicago White Sox and the Tampa Bay Rays, so they do have a nice homestand at the end of the year. For if you're a Tigers fan, they can hopefully pull those games out. If you're a Mariners fan, you really hope that over the next 10 or so games, with Baltimore, Kansas City, and then Baltimore again, that the Tigers do get beat up on and they do find their way out of this race. I mean, if Baltimore and Kansas City wins, it doesn't matter. All those teams are not, the Mariners aren't going to be able to catch either of those teams, so who cares, right? So we want Baltimore to win, we want Kansas City to win. So over the next few weeks, those are the teams that we are fans of. And then, of course, the Minnesota Twins, who have an off day today on the 12th before staying at home to face the Cincinnati Reds. They don't have an easy schedule going forward either, as they have to play the Cleveland Guardians on the road from the 16th to the 19th. So a 4-game set versus the Cleveland Guardians. Again, we're big Guardians fans here. And then they face the Boston Red Sox, which again, we hope that this series is a bloodbath for one of these teams. And then they get to face the Miami Marlins at home, and they finish up the season with the Baltimore Orioles at home as well. Another tough series for them. For the Twins, they have a pretty tough road ahead of them to be able to hold on to that 3rd wildcard spot, and honestly, I would be shocked if the Twins do find themselves in that 3rd wildcard spot, even though they do have a bit of a lead in that spot right now. Again, the Twins are up by 3 games, but they have a series coming up versus the Red Sox, where the Red Sox can really make a name for themselves, just like Channing Tatum did his Gambit. And then the Detroit Tigers as well have a tough season the rest of the way. So these two teams, or all 3 teams, will probably beat up on each other. The Mariners don't have to face any of them. With that being said, the Mariners have lost the tiebreaker to all 3 of these teams, so if the Mariners end up being tied with any of these 3 teams at the end of the season standing spot is going to go to one of those 3 teams, and the Mariners will find their way out of it. So the Mariners have to be up at least 1 game on any of these teams the rest of the way. At 4 games out, that's going to be a really tough ask with only 15 games left to play. But it's not impossible if the Mariners can find a way to get hot. The most likely way the Mariners are going to make the playoffs is via the division by taking down the Houston Astros, and if they get that 3rd wildcard spot, well, then they will play the Astros in the wildcard round. Looking at the remaining strength of schedule in the MLB, the teams that we really need to focus on here is Boston. They have the 11th hardest schedule the rest of the way, with 4 versus the Yankees and 3 versus the Twins. Their easiest opponents would be the Blue Jays for 3 and Tampa Bay for 6. Then we have the Mariners. They have the 18th hardest strength of schedule the rest of the way, 3 versus the Yankees and 3 versus the Houston Astros, with 7 versus the Rangers and 3 versus the Oakland Athletics the rest of the way. That's 10 games against teams below 500 for the Mariners the rest of the way. Whereas, of course, the Astros and the Yankees are both above 500. Houston has the 20th hardest schedule the rest of the way, so their schedule's a little bit easier than the Mariners through the rest of these 16 or 17 games. They have 3 versus Cleveland, 3 versus San Diego, and 3, of course, versus Seattle, with 7 versus the Angels and 1 left versus the Athletics. And of all the teams we talked about, Detroit has the easiest schedule the rest of the way. This is definitely skewed by being allowed to play the White Sox, the worst team in baseball history, for 3, but they also have 1 left versus the Rockies and 3 left versus the Tampa Bay Rays, with 6 left versus Baltimore and 3 versus Kansas City, with a .470 winning percentage against their opponents the rest of the way. It's a dead sprint until the playoffs for the Seattle Mariners, and it's going to be tough for them to be able to come away with a playoff spot, but it is certainly possible for them to take the division from the Houston Astros, and while I think it's a little bit less likely, the wild card is still an option for them as well, depending on if these teams do beat up on each other. It's going to be a crazy final 2 weeks of the season. I know I'm going to be pulling my hair out, and I just appreciate you guys being there along with me. Thank you guys so much for watching this one, and go Mariners.